the biggest.
I'm sorry, Councillor, but we need to stop for a minute. Hello, does it work? No. Is that all right? No. Just testing again.
Hello, can you hear me?
that changing, because there simply wouldn't be room. People get there too early in the morning to commemorate the veterans. Thank you.
Yeah, just to comment that we're obviously looking at the planning application, but separately to that, there's the licence from the council, and in that licence there will be conditions in terms of when the tables and chairs should be removed. Clearly, that those conditions will also say that you can't put them out there when there's a civic event happening. So we can completely control it, and we do. Under the license, which is why sometimes there aren't tables and chairs there when they shouldn't be.
Sorry, could I just? I just want to say thank you. My point was that the suggestion was that the businesses aren't complying with that and may not, and indeed they do. And I can't see any suggestion from the speakers that they would not in future. They're well-established businesses, well-respected businesses in the city.
I'd like to move to the vote. John, could you run the vote, please?
That has fallen, 7 votes against, 6 in favour.
Chair, can I suggest that the very simple solution to this would have been to divide the existing space into two, one half for one pub and the other half for the other pub? Why this wasn't put forward in the first place, I just don't know.
Okay, the decision has been made, and we need to just confirm the reasons, don't we? I think you have decided on the same grounds as before, but we do need a proposal to refuse. So at the moment we haven't granted, but we haven't actually made a decision to refuse. Councillor Stockley, would you be prepared to do that?
Would indeed, Chair.
We had overdevelopment of the butter market and harmful to the character of the area were the reasons last time.
I
and
stand
I think
by
that's
those,
been
yeah.
repeated again today.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a seconder?
Seconded, Chair.
Councillor Dixie is seconding it. So now we need to take a vote. So this time, the vote in favour is a vote to refuse. And John, can we run the vote?
And that has carried, 7 in favour, 6 against.
Fine, let's move on to the next application. That's application number CA 2400224, land at Bodkin Farm, Thanet Way, Home Bay. I'm going to ask the planning officer, Joanna Demoska, to introduce the report. Joanna.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. So to start with, there are a couple of clarifications I would like to share with you, members. So first of all, the description of the development refers to secondary school that is 6 FTE plus 6th form. My report in one area refers to 8 FTE. I meant 6 FTE plus 6th form. So that's a clarification. Then secondly, on 16th of April, Chesterfield Neighbourhood Plan was published for consultation by Canterbury City Council. This plan doesn't allocate any new housing sites on the basis that the housing within the area is delivered through strategic allocations as part of the draft Canterbury local plan. And that includes Bodkin Farm. But this neighbourhood plan is at the very early stage of preparation and only limited weight can be attached to it, similarly to the draft local plan of Canterbury. Chesterfield Parish Council commented on the application and engaged in the application process, neither supporting or objecting to the scheme, with their points included as part of all representations received. Now let's move to the presentation itself. So you're looking at the first slide that shows the site area extent outlined in red. We are adjacent to the urban area of Whitstable, but outside it within the green gap. To the north you have Thanet Way, and to the south there is Maydowns Road. Okay, here we can see the proposed land use plan, which shows that the proposal will include 2 access points, as the proposal is an outline planning application with 2 access points of Thanet Way being proposed for approval at this stage. All other matters are reserved for later phases, later applications. The proposal is for, in totality, 300 homes, including 30% of affordable housing. There is local centre and care home closest to the Thanet Way. We also have residential parcels, as indicated in orange, across the site. And there is to the south of the site, at the edge and closest to Maydowns Road properties, there is provision for bungalows only. This plan is for approval at this stage, so the plan referred to in the decision notice would specify that that area is for bungalows only. Now, to the right-hand side of the plan, you can, in purple, pink color, you can see land reserved for school. That is 8 hectares. In addition to this proposal, there is also public right-of-way diversion incorporated within the proposed development and the application, and that would mean that the existing access at the end of Maydowns Road would be closed and the public right-of-way diverted throughout the application site, as we can see indicated within the pink lines on this plan. Of course, that would be subject to a separate process post first approval directly to KCC. And here there is a short video showing you the existing gate, and then also showing you a feel for the site and the area of land where the school would go, allotment and parts of residential parcels. So that's the gate that would be closed as part of the diversion order, stopping up order. And then you, at present, you can walk there, and here you can see the application side. It's southeast edge of the site, and you're looking towards the land where the school would go. That's it. And then the next one. So this slide is showing you the parameters in terms of the heights. So we can see that there is going to be a variety here from bungalows, single-story buildings, to school to the right-hand side being 2-story building up to 10.5 meters height. The highest buildings within the site will be 15 meters up to 3-story. That is local centre and a care home. And majority of the residential parcels will be maximum 2.5-story up to 12.5 meters. That is for approval at this stage. Now, that is an illustrative plan only that was submitted to demonstrate to officers and consultees that all requirements of the policies can be delivered across the site, and there is sufficient land provision to meet the policy requirements, essentially. And that shows different typologies of open space, reptile mitigation areas, land buffers to the north of the site along Thanet Way, and also different play areas in compliance with the policy requirement as described in the report. That is also an illustrative plan just to show how the layout of the development could be presented at the later reserve matters application. Okay. Now let's move to the next slide, which is showing the access arrangement in more detail. I will follow up with further slides showing clearer plans, but this is just an introduction showing the Chesterfield roundabout, and then we can see that part of the proposal will be to incorporate pavement, which is shared surface with 1 meter green verge along the southern part of the site. We will have 2 access points, one serving residential parcel and the other one serving primarily school. And then in terms of the other improvements that the site and the development is delivering and highways interventions, we have 3 crossing points and also speed reductions delivered through a transport regulation order. Now, focusing more about the speed reductions, speed restrictions. So there are 2 proposed. One will be to Thanet Way, so that's indicated in blue on this line. The proposal is to reduce speed from 60 to 50, and that is just illustrative map to show the extent, but of course there will be a follow-up application directly to KCC to determine the exact extent of that. And then secondly, what is proposed is the reduction of speed on Chesterfield Road, and you can see that small bit of Chesterfield Road, which is orange, that would be reduced to 30 miles per hour to link with the existing speed limits along that road. Secondly, there were some queries during the consultation process around the pedestrian crossings that are delivered. So there will be 3 crossing points delivered along Thanet Way. All of them are signalized crossing. This is type of infrastructure that is delivered through a secondary application, so follow-up application to KCC Highways, that's called Section 278 application, where the detailed design is nailed down directly with the highways experts and engineers. That is kind of showing and indicating that there will be pedestrian crossing along the desire line of pedestrians. This is the crossing point 1. And in terms of the type of the crossing that will be incorporated here, like I said, all of them are signalized, and at least 1 crossing is required to be toucan crossing, and that is secured through condition number 10 in line with the request from KCC Highways. And then also on the connectivity and pedestrian walkways to link the site to the surrounding infrastructure and public transport. We've prepared 2 videos to show you the route from the train station to the site, so you can see and experience that for yourself. So you can see here that there is a continuous walkway and a pavement connection as you leave the train station. There is a tiny part of the site that is slightly narrower, but it does allow you to pass. And then also you can see here that the traffic is lower, and that is consistent with the feedback that we've received from KCC Highways, which installed software here that measures the traffic speed to be of average 40 miles per hour. Now you're at the Chesterfield roundabout and you're going towards Thanet Way. You can see that the pavement is wide enough, provides shared surface for both cyclists and pedestrians. And here we have a continuation of Thanet Way, again shared surface, but that is to the north of Thanet Way. That will be further improved by the proposed development by creating those signalized junction points and shared surface with 1 meter wide green verge on the opposite side of Thanet Way, so to the south of Thanet Way. Okay, that's it. And then lastly, here we go. lastly, in terms of the connectivity to public transport being buses, we can see here that there is no bus service provided within the application site directly, but there are bus stops within the walking distance to the site that provide frequent service, including school bus services, but also local bus services, number 5 and 400. So that is the description of the proposed development. Now, in terms of the summary of the planning considerations and the planning balance, the application is located currently outside of the built confines of Whitstable and within the green gap, so it conflicts with two adopted local plan policies being SB4 and OS7. So that is balanced against the benefits of the scheme and the fact that the council doesn't have fibre housing plan supply, the fact that the scheme is delivering 30% of affordable housing and also market housing, the fact that it delivers care home is also afforded significant weight. And in addition, there are benefits arising from the delivery of the school. So in the overall planning balance, the benefits of the scheme does outweigh the conflict with the policies. Just to mention, limited weight can be attached to the draft local plan, but the public statement has been made by the council that identified this site as a potential draft allocation, concluding at the same time that there is a limited contribution of this area to the green gap. So overall, the benefits of the scheme outweigh the harm, and officers recommended the scheme for approval subject to Section 106 and conditions. And lastly, I just wanted to raise that there is also an amendment to draft conditions. There is proposal to include additional condition proposing phasing. So there would be an additional condition requiring a phasing plan to be submitted for approval before any development commences within the site. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joanne. So now we move to our speakers, and our first speaker is Ken Little, who is a supporter. Would you like to come forward? Is that me? Yes.
Yeah, some facts, because I know you lot love facts. Fact one is Maydowns Road, 35 years ago, I tried to get planning permission for a double bungalow. Guess why it got refused? Anybody want to have a guess? Sewage capacity. And where are we now with this plan? What's the big issue? I see Councillor Old, I see Councillor Flaherty waiting on the wings to come up here and start telling us there's problems with sewage. I knew that 35 years ago. I had to build one single bungalow because you wouldn't let me build two. Now, I've just seen that access pathway under that bridge. I mean, seriously? My site at Golden Hill has got the same pathway on one side that you lot decided wasn't fit enough to be in the 2045 local plan. Regulation 18, Councillor Cornell's yawning. We had her in court last week. We're back there again, so don't think it's gone away. We're appealing that nonsense. But let's get to the reality of the facts. Oh, bye-bye, she's walking out. Good luck. See, they don't like facts. The problem is they don't like facts. Nobody likes the facts here. Okay? So you all can walk away because they'll all come back and all you're going to have is a load of nonsense.
I'm afraid you cannot deviate from the issues to do with
it's the issue. She sat on the committee. She sat on the committee.
This is Mr. Little. I'm sorry,
did she sit on the committees?
I said
It's what's unacceptable. What, the truth?
Mr. Little.
I know the truth is unacceptable in here. We've been at it for 35 years.
Please, Mr. Little, I'm afraid you have to leave because what you're doing
it's a public building. We've been all through this before.
Okay.
It's a public building. I've been invited to speak.
I'm asking
if you don't want to hear the evidence and the facts, then put some earplugs in your ears.
Mr. Little, you're not talking about this application. You're talking.
I am talking about the application. She sat on the committee. So did I. So did Flaherty, putting leaflets through my daughter's doors in Golden Hill.
And I think we will pause the meeting. John, should we stop the live stream?
Quiet.
We're pausing the meeting.
Was that true? Did
everybody, we're stopping. Apologies, everybody. We are resuming, and I'm just collecting myself. The next person to speak is Bob Todd, who is an objector. Would you like to come forward? And you have 3 minutes.
That's a bit of a show to follow. Chair, members, Chesfield Parish Council objects to this application on the clear planning grounds of infrastructure capacity, highway safety and uncertainty over community provision. Residents are deeply worried by the cumulative scale of current and proposed development in Chesfield. If consented, these schemes together would more than double the number of households in the parish. Growth on that scale must be matched by infrastructure, and at present it clearly is not. Paragraph 137 of the officer report states the surrounding foul drainage network has insufficient capacity. We also have grave concerns about how the local and wider infrastructure will cope. Whilst there is a proposed condition to address surface water, there is no condition relating to foul drainage, which is essential to protect residents. We also remain troubled, despite the modelling, about the increasing traffic impacts around the site and pedestrian safety, particularly for future school children. As an example only, this short section of the Old Thanet Way will have a double roundabout, at least 6 other access points and numerous pedestrian crossings. Surely the proposed 50 miles an hour is inappropriate and unsafe. We welcome the parameters plan approach of locating bungalows on the site edge closest to the existing homes on Maydowns Road. However, the wording that development should be in broad accordance is too weak. If permission is granted, it should require the development to be carried out in accordance with the parameter plan, surely. Whilst land would be gifted to KCC for a secondary school, there is no guarantee that the school will be delivered. We therefore seek a new condition that this land be safeguarded for educational use in perpetuity to prevent any future development. It is disappointing that no commercially viable bus service is proposed within the site, despite the emerging local plan promoting a bus-led strategy. Finally, should the application be accepted, we hope the housing mix will better reflect the parish's recent housing needs survey. For these reasons, Chesfield Parish Council asks members to refuse this application, or failing that, to impose far stronger conditions to protect
Please would you sum up
and future residents.
Time. Thank you. Thank you. And the next speaker is Darryl Black, an objector. I think he may not be here, so we didn't have him checked in by John, so I just making it sure. So then we move on to Peter Slaughter, Whitstable Society, please.
Thank you. I have been asked by the Whitstable Society to speak on their behalf. It's their view that before this development is approved, we need to assess what impact it would have on local roads, and we need to address any expected problems. The applicants have not yet done the necessary assessments. I'm a transport and development planner, albeit now retired. I've spent years assessing the impacts of developments on highways, and I'm a member of the Chartered Institution of Highways and Transportation. It is my professional view that the applicant's traffic modelling contains too many omissions to be a credible assessment of the traffic impact of this development. The applicants need to model the 3 main Chestfield and Swalcliffe roundabouts as a single system, including the 2 adjacent signalised crossings. And they need to use correct pedestrian flows at the pedestrian crossings and make intelligent estimates for the extra pedestrians from the proposed new school. Unfortunately, the report written by the planning officer for this committee has material omissions. It does not comply with the council's requirements, so you do not have the necessary information you need to make an informed decision. The council's code of good practice states that reports should be accurate and contain the substance of any objections, and reports should contain technical appraisals that clearly justify the recommendations. In the first point, the officer's report did not state that the Whitstable Society revealed errors in the transport modelling. In the second point, there is no technical appraisal justifying the KCC officer's reported view. I understand from Dr. Jackson of the Grasmere Residents Association that they have already raised a formal complaint about matters related to the handling of this application. This matter is bigger than just this application. If you approve it, effectively you're allowing other developers to use similarly low standards in their applications, such as the much larger Brooklands farm development. You'll be sending an unfortunate message to developers that for the Canterbury district, the relevant officers don't have time to look at details of traffic modelling, therefore they have a good chance of getting away with anything. The correct and safest course of action is to defer a decision on this application to allow the developers to correct their traffic modelling, also to enable a safety assessment of the large numbers of school children using the narrow footway under the Chestfield Railway Bridge. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we move to Councillor James Flanagan, Ward Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, councillors. I'd like to raise some serious issues concerning the traffic modelling and safety for this application. Essentially, the traffic modelling is missing key parts. Firstly, whilst the modelling includes the traffic impact on the Chestfield Road and Reeves Way roundabout, it does not include the impact on the nearby St John's Road roundabout, a critical traffic spot next to Chestfield Railway Station. This roundabout is a major link between Tankerton, Swalcliffe and Chestfield. It's closer to Chestfield roundabout than Reeves Way roundabout, and it is already congested at peak times and at weekends. Secondly, the modelling doesn't include the impact of the nearby pedestrian crossing between the 2 roundabouts at Reeves Way and Chestfield Road. Why would this not be modelled when it forms part of the road layout considered as part of the planning application? In addition, the modelling indicates around 16 pedestrians using the crossing next to Chestfield Road Railway Station during morning peaks. Now, the Whitstable Society have carried out their own analysis, as you would see from their representation on the website. They have found that over 60 people were using the same crossing during the morning peak. Now, why is this all important? It's all important because the whole area has a complex layout of roundabouts and crossings. The roundabout at St John's Road and the crossing need to be included in the modelling, as both can cause and have been known to cause traffic queues. It's all part of the single network you've just heard about, and which we need to model to get anywhere near a reasonable view of traffic modelling as part of this application. This hasn't been done. But there is an overriding safety issue when it comes to access to the site. The application makes reference to walking distances and bus travel, but any pupil, or resident for that matter, walking from Swalcliffe and East Tankerton will have to negotiate the narrow pathway underneath the railway bridge you now see on the screen and in the video earlier. The picture on the screen courtesy of Google Maps. This pathway falls between the busy St John's roundabout and Chestfield Road roundabout, approximately 1.3 to 1.4 metres in width. There are no guardrails. There is no pavement on the right-hand side. Active Travel identified this pathway was an issue, but the report states that it cannot be improved without further reducing its width. It's not mentioned again. The travel plan doesn't mention this pathway. In fact, the plan focuses mainly on pedestrian access along the A2990, but no mention of this critical pathway. Now, an 8 FTE secondary school will inevitably mean a large increase in footfall on this pathway from potentially hundreds of pupils making their way to school, right against a busy road. This has not been properly considered, and as such, this does not conform to wording in the draft local plan, which for this site states the access and transportation strategy for the site should provide safe pedestrian connectivity. Nor does it conform to policy DS17, which states routes and access should be designed to be safe and inclusive, nor does it conform to the MPPF, which stipulates the need to ensure highway safety as part of a development. Councillors, for the reasons I've provided, I ask you please to refuse this application, or at the very least, ask for the information that is missing that is so fundamental to the traffic modelling and safety of our residents. But I do hope that you refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the final speaker is Nick Jones, the applicant. If you could come forward, please. Thank you. Just to be clear, you also have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, members of the committee, for giving me the opportunity to speak to you this evening. I'm Nick Jones from Turley, and I've been working for Parker Strategic Land on this project since late 2022 and have been the main point of contact with the community and with the Parish Council. Whitstable's secondary school children have limited options to study in the town, with many currently being bussed out to schools in Canterbury and Faversham. The town's school-age population is going to keep increasing as Canterbury City Council allocates land for new homes to meet the identified need. Delivering secondary schools is hard. They're large institutions that need a lot of land, take a long time to plan, and are expensive to deliver. Kent County Council therefore needs to plan for the medium and long term to allow it to secure the land so that funds can be raised to deliver the schools the town's children need. So following a request from the City Council and from KCC, Parker Strategic Land has been promoting this site into the emerging local plan for both the secondary school and a mixed community, which not only delivers homes and services for Chesterfield, but also unlocks the land for the school. If you approve the application this evening, it will provide the site for the secondary school an early certainty for Kent County Council, who will then be able to seek further 106 payments for those delivering homes elsewhere in Whitstable. Any delay to the application will result in uncertainty about how Whitstable will serve its future secondary-aged children. The strategic need for the school notwithstanding, we knew we needed to make sure the proposals were right for the site and for the nearest neighbours. We therefore worked closely with Chesterfield Parish Council for over 3 years, the local ward councillors and the residents of Maydowns Road to understand their specific concerns so we could respond before we submitted the application. Changes made in direct response to this feedback we received included moving the public footpath away from back gardens and on the north side of Maydowns Road, as you've seen, discouraging the use of the private road for school drop-offs, setting in the parameter plan an area for bungalows closest to the homes on the northern side of Maydowns Road, as you've also seen, and including a foul drainage connection downstream of Maydowns Road. This was a fundamental piece from residents and the Parish Council and has been all the way through, and we responded directly. In our view, this is exactly how pre-application discussions with communities should work, constructive feedback leading to meaningful change. I also, if I may, wanted to respond on the points raised about traffic and speed limits. We've done everything asked of us by the Highway Authority, who requested the speed limit restriction to 50 miles an hour. Oh, and the overall approach is about prioritising pedestrians and cyclists with 3 traffic light controlled crossing points on the Old Thanet Way. These give multiple options to school children and residents to cross in a safe and controlled way. This is a vitally important application for Chesterfield, Whitstable and the whole of Canterbury, as it sets in train the delivery of critical social infrastructure.
Could you wind up, please?
At the same time as delivering new homes. We very much hope you support the application.
Thank you. So we move to consider the application. I will propose from the chair that we adopt the recommendation, the officer's recommendation, which is section 101 grant, subject to legal agreement and safeguarding conditions, with the same proviso as the previous one. I will listen to the application before making up my mind. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Prentice, thank you. So we put that proposal on the table, and can I open up the debate? Oh, sorry. Absolutely. Before I open up the debate, Councillor Old is going to speak and then withdraw from the discussion. Councillor Old. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Chair. Fellow councillors, I'll be brief and direct. This application conflicts with the policy OS 6 of the current local plan. The council's adopted local plan makes clear the importance of retaining the green gap between Herne Bay and Whitstable. Policy OS 6 permits development only where it will not lead to coalescence between existing settlements. That objective is not a discretionary aspiration, it is a core planning consideration. Allowing this proposal will create a continuous ribbon of development along the old Thanet Way that will undermine the distinct identities of Herne Bay and Whitstable. A similar proposal for Bodkin Farm, when the site was then owned by Eton College, was refused by this council and upheld when it went to appeal. The inspector recognised the council's objective to protect the green gap as the key justification for the refusal. And here I have to take issue with respect with the officer's report. The officer was reporting that the benefits will outweigh the green gap argument. Well, I have to point out that when the planning inspector considered this, we were also in presumption. We also had failed to meet our housing delivery targets, and still the planning inspector rejected the application on the grounds of the need to maintain the green gap. Now, you may say that was then and things are different now. Well, just consider the planning application dated just this morning, and I think it was sent round to all of us, CA 24 01560. That was a planning application for self-storage units to be located directly opposite Bodkin Farm on the north side of the old Thanet Way. That too went to appeal, but it was rejected at appeal because it's within the green gap. And the planning inspector said it was rejected because it's within the green gap. Just today, that decision notice was issued. So for the planning inspector to refuse that site because of concerns about the green gap, and then for this committee to approve Bodkin Farm and disregard the green gap arguments, that would be inconsistent, incongruous, illogical, and wouldn't it make us a laughingstock? Now let's turn to the proposal for the proposed secondary school. Note how the applicant has sought to frame this proposal as a means to deliver a new secondary school and 300 houses. But they emphasise the new secondary school. But can I direct your attention to the new local plan in draft that I distributed and showed to some of my councillor colleagues earlier. Page 148, paragraph 4.10, says, land to the west of Thorndon Wood Road presents an opportunity to deliver a new secondary school for Herne Bay. Where is that site west of Thorndon Wood Road? It's 950 metres away from the proposed secondary school site in Bodkin Farm. Do you seriously expect us to consider that KCC or its successor authority will build two secondary schools within less than a kilometre of each other? Now, I'm new to the planning committee, and many of you are much more experienced than I am, but we'll see what's going on here. This proposal is nothing more than a cynical attempt to counter the clear planning concerns about traffic, the green gap, and so on. And no doubt, in the fullness of time, KCC's successor authority will accept the land gift and simply sell it off for more housing, just as Councillor Todd from the Parish Council is predicting. So this council previously rejected a very similar proposal to the one before you tonight, and the inspector upheld that decision. The traffic and infrastructure concerns put forward by this council remain unresolved, and the school argument is completely fallacious. This application conflicts with policy OS 6, and for all of those reasons, I urge members to reject this application. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll just give Councillor Old a moment to go to the members' room. Thank you. I will open up for discussion. Councillor Bothwell.
Thank you, Chair. Before I express my views, I just had 3 questions for officers. The first was, what is the proposed speed limit on the housing site itself? The second is, how is sewage being disposed of? Because I've had conflicting reports about where the sewage is going to and how it's connecting to the sewage system. And the third question addresses points raised by a couple of our public speakers about the traffic modelling and whether traffic modelling does take into account all the local roundabouts and road junctions. It's implied by the public speakers that it doesn't. So I just wanted clarification from officers on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I'm going to ask the Officer Joe to respond. I
Thank
think
you,
I know
Chair.
the answers, but
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so all valid points. I'm happy to provide clarification, of course. So in terms of the speed limit on housing site, all the roads internally will be designed to accommodate 20 miles per hour speeds. In terms of the sewage, I actually had a follow-up meeting with Southern Water today just to clarify, make sure that I had everything understood correctly. So yes, it is integral to the application process to dispose of the sewage, not on the current manhole on May Downs Road, but the waste will be pumped through along Thanet Way to dispose of it at Chestfield roundabout. So the proposal will bypass the connection at Maysdown Road entirely, despite Southern Water indicating that there is some capacity there at present still, as I was advised today. But the proposal integrated within this application is to dispose of the foul water within the Chestfield roundabout chamber. Now, in terms of the traffic, so of course we've heard that there's been a lot of concerns raised locally through residents, and I have to agree that there were a lot of very technical and valid points raised through representation from Whitstable society. That's why it was interrogated so in such a fine detail, and I myself forwarded a response and representation from them to KCC to provide response and review every single point that was raised in detail to make sure that the transport and modelling data is robust. And I had a look as the speakers were making their representation and speaking, and I can confirm that the additional information and evidence submitted with the application they consider the impact on St John's roundabout. The response from KCC Highways, the most recent response from KCC Highways does confirm that the evidence demonstrates no worsening impact on that roundabout at all. as a result of the development. The transport assessment look at a number of scenarios that can happen, but of course we have to be mindful of the fact that the model, the transport modeling cannot consider the Brooklands Farm improvements such as slip roads, etc., because that is not development that is currently permitted. So there is no certainty that this mitigation will happen. So it would not be right for the applicant to include that in the modeling. That is something for Brooklands Farm to consider at the later stage, whatever happens with this application. But in terms of the transport assessment, all the representations were looked at and considered by myself and by KCC Highways in very detail, which provided very detailed response to all the points. They were satisfied that the modelling is robust and there is no severe impact on highways, the surrounding network in terms of the increase of traffic. The maximum increase in traffic that was recognised by KCC was 2% on top of the existing levels of vehicles crossing the roads, so that cannot be considered severe in planning terms. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next person is Councillor Prentice. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. There's quite a lot I'd like to address, and I'll probably come back a few times if that's okay. I'll probably start by addressing some of the positives, but I do have a lot of concerns. I think the public right-of-way diversion makes a lot of sense. I think it makes the public right-of-way more accessible. As I note how the public right-of-way is currently configured, it's not the most accessible route. And I think anything we build and modify in the future has room to be improved. So that's a positive thing. I think 90 affordable homes of varying tenures is also a real plus, and that's something that we very much want to see as a council. I'd love to go further, obviously, but we are looking at the minimum 30%, and I think that's acceptable. And, you know, the provision of the school site is very positive, and it's a very good thing. I think one of our public speakers made a very pertinent point about the protection of that site, and I think something that safeguards that site for school use would be very, very useful. I can understand why people are cynical about parcels of land being potentially repurposed and sold off at a later date. I don't necessarily agree with that cynical view, but I can understand why people have that view. So maybe starting off with some of the questions then that I have, rather than monopolise my time speaking. Around speed limits, I would even go as far to say that 40 miles an hour is a more acceptable speed along that road. I think 50 is too high. I visited on Sunday afternoon, which is perhaps not a representative time to go because it was a sunny day. There are people clearly coming back from the beach or wherever. It's not representative of the road on a peak time. But I saw boy races and speeding cars. Something we can do to calm down the traffic in that area considerably would be very good. It's the Old Thanet Way for a reason. It's not the primary trunk road. It's a more local road, and if we are going to be building more homes and more facilities in the area, we can't just assume that every vehicle is going to charge through at the national speed limit. So I would suggest 40 miles an hour. Because anything that we do to make crossing the road less of a barrier, because we want people to use the crossings, but human beings don't necessarily use crossings. They do cross at points that they sometimes see as most convenient. We have to bear that in mind. I know Councillor Flanagan and Councillor Old had previously suggested a footbridge, but I don't think that's feasible for lots of reasons. And I think the pedestrian crossings are a better idea because we want people to be crossing at level, at grade. I think footbridges bring in a load more problems and also are quite unsafe. And you bring in a lot of risk to a structure like that. And also, it's not necessarily very attractive either aesthetically. I've probably used up my 3 minutes for now, but I wouldn't mind that speed limit point being addressed, because if that's something that we can press KCC on, I'd be pleased to hear what the answer is. Thank you.
Of course, this is something we did rehearse a bit with the south of Thanet Way, you might remember. We had quite a long debate and went back to them, and even so, we then made a recommendation. But I think if I could ask the planning officer, Joe, to comment on all of this, because I've also got similar views. There are issues about what happened with the debate about the speed, and there's also, and I'm not, I benefit from the same information that you're, I think, asking for, which is what happens about traffic calming. So you have these 3 points, and as I understand it, there's quite a lot of street furniture stroke, ways in which, but I think I'm not technical. So I think the main thing to do is to put these, I think we'd all benefit from a little bit more information. It's not easy to see it, as some people have pointed out from the drawings. So Joanne, thank you.
Thank you. So just to give a little bit of a background to the application, when the application was initially submitted, it actually proposed a reduction along Thanet Way to 30 or 40 miles per hour initially. It was KCC that opposed to that proposal and requested 50 miles an hour along Thanet Way. So applicant agreed to that. It was a specific request of KCC. However, as part of Section 278 works to Thanet Way, there is a lot of road markings. All the pedestrian crossing will be signalized as well. So as a reasonable driver holding driving license, you see those markings, you see the signs, you are expected to slow down. On top of that, I would say there is an existing crossing point at that road, and that is uncontrolled entirely. People do cross without any safety measures being there in place at all right now. So as a result of this, the applicant is proposing 2 crossing points signalized near to the access points, but also 3rd additional crossing point near the junction and near the roundabout, which is on the Zaire line of pedestrian. So there is an improvement here as a result of proposals.
Can I just come back, because I think we should have more. I think we should have more influence on that speed. I think it's unacceptable, and I can understand why it's being reduced by 10 miles an hour, but bearing in mind the number of, I don't know the demographics of the area particularly because I don't live there, but you're going to have kids going to local primary schools, and the idea of crossing even a 50, well, actually, it's just unacceptable. Crossing a 50-mile-an-hour road. Now, I know kids are going to be expected to use the proper crossing points, but real life isn't necessarily like that. So, and we should be doing it as I said. We should be doing everything we can, I think, to reduce barriers, because fast speeding traffic. And I felt intimidated by the traffic when I visited on Sunday. Is a barrier to people, and I would like to know what mechanism we have to put more pressure on KCC. Is it Joint Transport Board? Is it something else? Because I'm not happy with it.
Well, Simon's got a couple of suggestions. I think give those to the committee. I think it'd be good just to think about what we might want to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really is important, though, to understand that, sorry, you're slightly deviating from your point, is to understand that that railway station is Chesfield and Swalcliffe railway station. A lot of people currently walk from Chesfield to that station across the road as it is. So there will be a benefit. I just I think it's an important point. But having said that, clearly a reduction in speed limit would be beneficial. I mean, KCC is the Highways Authority, and they have said that that they think the speed limit should be 50. So we have to accept that's what the Highways Authority is saying. But there's no reason why we can't do what we did last time and have a dialogue with the cabinet member at KCC. It's a different cabinet member now, so we don't know what their reaction might be. But certainly there's an opportunity to do that again.
I've got a few other things to come back on, but I appreciate the answer. Thank you for the answer. There are lots of other things, but I'll let others speak first.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just carry on to what Councillor Prentice was saying there, because it's quite easy to see these roads on the flat on a screen, but if you drive from Herne Bay towards that site, it's quite a steep incline. So if you're going at sort of 50 miles an hour, by the time you reach the brow of the hill, there might be a crossing there, and you may not see it. It could, if you've got a lorries breaking in the wet, etc., modelling on dry days is totally different on modelling on other types. But anyway, so my main points, there's two really. First is about the school. How, again, it'll be go back to KCC type thing. But how do you actually guarantee that a school will be built? Because obviously, being the councillor for Thannington and Wincheap, I went to many presentations with KCC, the education department, etc., developer. Yes, the school's going to be built, and lo and behold, to use an expression I don't like, it isn't being built, and that it was just suddenly it was going to be built, and now it's not. So how can a school be guaranteed to be built? Yes. And then on the same similar lines with the public footpath, again, I've been told with, I think it's Saxon Fields, Pentland Homes, that there are two public rights of way there, and one is still blocked. Well, they were both blocked to start with. One was for safety, and it has been reopened, but one is still blocked. So how, again, where is the responsibility to making sure that the public right of way is open and accessible very soon after it's diverted? And again, yeah, I will mention that the public, the pavement between the two roundabouts underneath the bridge that people refer to, in my opinion, it's too narrow, and it is dangerous with a lot of people. It's dangerous at the moment with lots of people, just when you're trying to get round people and you're in a rush. But I don't know what could be done with that little bit of pavement. Thank you.
I'm going to pick up on a couple of your points, Councillor Buckman.
Excuse me. Yeah. In terms of the public rights of way, Kent County Council obviously manage and maintain public rights of way. They've asked the applicant to pay £80,000 as part of this application so that they can improve the rights of way, given that there'll be significantly more use than there is at the moment. As you saw from the video that Joe showed earlier, I mean, it's a public right of way that it's just for ramblers as opposed to anyone who has any purpose to use them other than that. So there's an £80,000 contribution, which will be secured through the Section 106 agreement. In terms of the school, the first question is, can we guarantee there'll be a school built? Well, never. You can never ever do that, because it's a matter of a decision by the Education Authority at the time where they feel that they need to provide that additional school accommodation. They have a legal obligation to provide school places, and if they need to provide it, they will. And the benefit here is that we have a piece of land that would be available to them. The applicant, the owner, has said that they would transfer that land, and they would enshrine that within the Section 106 agreement. So they would transfer that land to the County Council, I believe, for a period of 20 years. So the County Council has 20 years in which it has exclusive right to to build a school on that land. So just, I mean, I think those points are quite important, because I think without those obligations, then yes, there'd be a real question over whether the footpath improvements of the school would be provided.
Where am I? Councillor Naomi Smith is the next person. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll probably come back more than once. On the master plan, I'm depressed beyond belief that our open spaces team even thought this was acceptable. The open spaces on this site are pushed to the edges again. They are not overlooked again. This is a constant that we're getting on planning applications. It's not fit for purpose. The Mugger and play area, along with the attenuation lake, are in the flood risk 3. What sequential testing was done for the play space and Mugger on the site? Because there should have been sequential testing to put it in flood risk 3. And so that's my first point. And I just think it's a very poor design and will not, and goes against very much the MPPF. And if I will get you the bit of the MPPF about sustainable communities. This is not how we should be developing community space and play spaces. They should be overlooked. They should form an integral part of a development and not be pushed to the side and not pushed up against a main road, as is the small leap up near the care home. It's just woeful and it's depressing, I'm afraid. I
think that I'll ask the Officer Joe to say something about this. But I mean, we did feel that, I made a note of it somewhere, it doesn't look right all in that corner. I mean, you make a good point. And I think it's condition 26 we could have a look at and change it. But so Joe first, can you make some comments on this? Because it does seem ridiculous, squashed in a corner.
Yes. So thank you very much for letting me speak. I acknowledge the point raised here in terms of this plan that was presented and showing the potential location of the play area. I did clarify at the time that this is not the plan that we're approving. It is just for the purposes of illustrating that there is enough space to accommodate all the requirements. In terms of the actual location that would come forward as part of the layout reserve matters application. So there is some opportunity for committee members to influence the location of the play areas, as for example, as part of condition 7 or 26, I think it's 26, where you can require play area to be located somewhere that you feel is more suitable to provide that maybe instruction to the applicant and the developer how to design the layout at the later phases. And in terms of the sequential testing, NPPF and the vulnerability guidance included within the NPPF confirms that the play areas and open spaces are compliant for flood zones, so they can be located within those areas at a little bit higher risk of flooding. So there is not a requirement for the sequential test from policy perspective if the developer is proposing open space in the flood risk zone. In terms of the overall residential development, it was located outside of the flood risk zones and also outside of the areas at risk of surface water flooding. And based on the very recent events and High Court judgments and appeals that were also made on that point, and the question when actually the sequential test does apply, the consequence of these recent events was the update to the National Planning Policy Guidance, which confirms that when the application is able to demonstrate that there is no risk of flooding to and no risk of safety to the future future occupiers, then the sequential test doesn't apply on the basis of limited surface water risk flooding. So there was not a requirement for the sequential test here.
Can I come back on this then? Because I'm just trying to understand.
Yes, so I think that whatever we do with this application, we should amend that 26 and do something about the integration.
But yes, but then if you integrate this, because the land that's at that far west end is the flood risk 3 land, and it's not going to be fit for housing. It's not really fit for play space, because if it does get flooded, the play space will get ruined and nobody's going to maintain it because they won't have the money to repair it because all the surfacing will have lifted up, particularly in a mugger. And you can't push the housing further out. I mean, it's almost like this is the site left over after plan. I used to call it slap, and it's because that's what it always was. It was like a slap in the face of land that's not really very useful, but they're trying to make it useful in this master plan. I want to make sure that we don't have that happen here, because it is a big amount of space, and to sort of move the play space into the housing more, something's got to give, and it's going to be the number of houses.
So when, I mean, I certainly think that the language would be about making sure, I don't know where the sentence would go in 26, but making sure that the play areas are integrated throughout the site and are overlooked. We could have that sentence in there.
The smaller one, children.
Well, then the debate is whether or not, if this is a flood area, because those mugger things have got a very special surface on, haven't they? And they've got
and that to leave the sort of mugger, which is a multi-use games area over there, it's not overlooked. It denies girls agency to use it because they don't go, because it's not overlooked. It actually denies boys that agency as well, because they feel it's just not placed. I mean, this is all valid research stuff again and again and again over years and years and years. That's why I'm so disappointed in our open spaces team for not doing anything about it.
I think we'd want to say all of them then. I think the point you're making is all of these play areas. So there's 2 leap and a neat play areas, and the mugger need to be integrated into the site where they're overlooked. They don't all have to be together. They could be in separate spaces, but they're integrated, and where there is some overlooking, which makes them vastly safer. It's not just for the children, is it? It's for the parents as well, who knows.
Yeah, it makes stronger communities and it creates better communities.
Okay, so, I mean, there's still obviously a lot of design issues, and we can't really debate all of that, but we can get the general point into here, because we are only talking about an outline planning application. We've got to remember that at this stage. Now, sorry, I need to look back at my list. Sir Jones.
Thank you, Chair. And thanks to the speakers and to our officer for her presentation this evening. Totally agree with you, Councillor Naomi Smith. I'll have to do that bit. Thanks very much. But as it's an outline application, this is the perfect opportunity to make any of those changes, and they should be made because it's just wrong. It should happen. Anyway, my concerns with it really are, people spoke tonight regarding the school and the deliveries in the school. No, you can't guarantee that. I mean, I can tell you from experience, we were guaranteed one, not a school, but a health centre on a golf course development and a bus route, and they still haven't arrived and not going to arrive. So these are the wish list of things and areas which are set aside particularly for where we were, the health thing never happened. But again, what I would say in space of the school where you say it's 20 years, and they'd look at it, make it 100 years, make it put it in perpetuity. Because the life cycle of pupils and birth and death rates go up and down. 20 years is a short period of time. We want to condition that so it's a longer period of time. So the education authority, whoever they are in the future, we'll have a big window of time, but not to give that space up too cheaply after 2 decades is what I would say for that. Regarding the traffic and the roads, I remember driving on the roads when they were the only Thanet way, and I can tell you the reason why we got a new one was because you couldn't move on it. No, we've moved forward 30 odd years, and I've been driving that road 3 or 4 times a week and at all different times. And it is at peak times, you'd expect it to be rammed at peak time. So you add more into it, it'd be even worse in that sense. The thing I'm really concerned about it, and Councillor Buckman mentioned, I drive it a lot, as you come past the garden centre, you're coming up the hill at 50 miles an hour, and you've got a short distance between a top and a right hand turn in there, and then which would be, I'm assuming, the school entrance, which is the further end, they're turning for the school, so there'll be a crossing there. That's just ridiculous. Not to do with us regarding the speed, but I did it literally the other day, even in my van, sitting high up. You're not seeing over the top of that hill till you're getting halfway up it. And it's someone needs to really go and look at that modelling, because I don't think just by saying we'll put this in here and that there it is going to work, in my opinion. And particularly when you've got a flow of traffic behind you. I mean, it almost builds up from Greenhill roundabout all the way back to Chestfield now. So that's a worry. I do welcome, it's all negative, I do welcome the fact that on the build there will be air source heat pumps, solar panels, there'll be no gas boilers put in, which is good for future. Obviously, we've got to manage as much biodiversity we can get out of it entirely. But the thing what I can't square the circle with, for me personally, is the green gap. We've had a green gap since I've lived in the area, I've lived in Whitstable area since 1980, 81. And what's happened in the green gap at one end, if you like, now I live in Herne Bay end, we've got a supermarket at one end, and down the other end by Chester, we've got a small little commercial development. And the green gap more or less remains. What we're going to do here, against our own policy, potentially, if this goes through, is go completely against that. And our balance, because we're in presumption of grant, totally understand that, we're not meeting the high housing target, you've got to ask ourselves, is that enough? Is doing this just to meet the housing target the right thing to do to go against our policy? So our tilted balance, or the tilted balance I had, I can look at all the aspects and say, okay, there's a road, we could do something to that. There's a this, we can do something with that. And then we come to the actual thing of doing it, which is the green gap, our own policy, which we've stuck by for years and years and years. We're just going to sprawl. Chestfield will be sprawled into Greenhill. It's important, it matters. Come to Herne and Broomfield and see the urban sprawl of the village I used to live in the sense of a village. It's no village anymore. It's massive. It's a suburb of Herne Bay. 2,000 houses in the village. 300's not a lot in compared to that, but this is significant. So other councils have spoken earlier regarding, is it good enough to refuse it on that? Well, yes, it is, if people see fit to do so. It's entirely up to them. But even last year, was it Worthing Borough Council had the same issue with 475 houses. The council refused it, and in presumption of grant, and they expect to upheld that. So the thing was refused. That's how I feel about it. I get the school. I don't think they'll deliver the school. I like it in principle. I'm just not comfortable with just filling that block of land, that open space. We ain't got much left. It's all gone at Herne and Broomfield. It's all gone. We've got a tiny little field left, and it's gone. And it's our own policy. The tilted balance for me is so difficult. I understand what we need to do as a council. We need to deliver homes and housing, but we just don't need to ride roughshod really over our own policies. What is the point of it? We just keep putting it in the shredder every time something comes along. It doesn't work for me. It's not, and obviously all the other things that people have said. So I won't say I'm on the fence. I'm in two minds still, to be fair, but I'm really struggling with that. Thank you, Chair.
Simon's going to come back on the green gap issue.
Yeah, it's a really difficult one. I mean, we're in presumption. Green gap has to be considered. What we would, in many cases, be trying to do is to resist any development in the green gap. I think the difficulty here is that, well, not difficulty, but the position here is that this is a site. This is a very sustainable site. It's near the railway. It's got good bus links. It's got the Sainsbury's. It's got a lot of positives to it in terms of accessibility. So that all weighs in favour of developing the site over and above the green gap. In addition to that, you've got the effectively got the school as a buffer. So you've got the proposed residential development, but then the school as a buffer. And I think that's particularly important. Without that school as a buffer, to me, there would be, it would be more difficult to see that this would be an acceptable development if the housing was right up to the edge of the green gap. But I think that school provides a buffer, but it also provides a really I don't know if it would be unique, but a very unusual opportunity to get hold of land, or for the county council to get hold of land that they could use to build a school. So there's a real, in the balance, that's a really important aspect. And I think that for me, and that this is where the officer report falls on the side of recommending approval, is that those combination of factors mean that yes, we can move forward on this site, but other green gap sites maybe not. But there's just a combination of factors here that I think weigh in that favour.
Councillor Forrester.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to thank all the speakers for joining tonight and bearing with us until we got to you. But I firstly wanted to echo Councillor Naomi Smith's concerns about the play spaces, particularly the mugger, and particularly for young girls and young women. It's isolated, it's not overlooked. There's much discourse about young people being part of society, feeling valued, feeling like involved members, parts of the community, and having social interaction with many other people, and how that builds communities. This does not do it. If you want to make those young people feel isolated, excluded, and not wanted, and encourage ASB, this is the design to do it. It excludes them and it gives an opportunity for less desirable activities to take place out of sight. The play space that's next to the Thanet Way is overlooked. I accept that, but it's overlooked by a care home when it could be overlooked by the local community centre, which would seem a much more natural choice where you can integrate other services that those families probably frequenting the site are more likely to use. Placing it next to a care home seems like it might just create tension. And so I query the rationality of that design. Moving on, a long time ago, I worked on Thanet Way. So I visited the site, many other councillors have done so. We've had the benefit of doing so in, I must say, lovely weather recently. Getting off that train at that station and walking along Thanet Way on a dark, windy, wet evening is not a pleasant experience. It doesn't feel like a safe experience. It's not one that people will be encouraged to do. And I do think the 60-mile-per-hour limit is too great there. Reducing it to 50 miles an hour is probably not sufficient. And I raise that particular concern because if you look at the plan, the eastern access road, which leads into where the proposed school is, the access roads are proposed to have 20 miles an hour. The drop from 50 miles an hour to 20 is significant. And at that access road, there's proposed to be an informal crossing, not a signal crossing like on the old Thanet Way, but an informal crossing. I don't think that's sufficient. Informal crossings are suitable when there is low traffic volume and low pedestrian volume. High speed or heavily trafficked roads require formal crossings like zebra or signal controlled crossings. This is one of two main access roads to the site. It will almost certainly, if the school's there, be the main access road that people use to access the school, and you will have significant pedestrian crossing there, certainly in the morning and evening. I don't think that's sufficient. And my the question I had for the officers, we've talked about this being outlined and it coming back as reserved. Can you clarify, would it come back as one item for reserve planning? We've seen with the Fannington developments that they've come back piecemeal. And my concern is, given the concerns raised about the Mugger and play space sites and others, if it comes back piecemeal, would we find ourselves, we'll only be able to consider the issues in each reserve matter as they come back, and may find ourselves bounced into a position where a certain layout has to be approved because we've approved housing here, we've approved school here, this is the only site left for a Mugger, for example. And I don't think that would satisfy the committee's concerns heard tonight.
Joe's going to come back on one or two of the points you raised. Thank you.
Thank you. So to clarify on the piecemeal nature on reserve matters application, we don't know the detailed phasing of the development, but it is fair to assume that the school will come forward as a separate phase, residential development will come forward as a separate phase. Before anything happens in terms of further applications being submitted, the applicant will be required to submit a phasing plan to us to approve, so we then accept the broad boundaries of the phases that will then come forward as one application. In addition to that, for example, with residential development phase that will come forward as part of reserved matters application, that application will need to demonstrate how it meets the policy requirements, including open space. So the applicant will be required to demonstrate where the play area is going at that time, to demonstrate that there is enough space safeguarded to meet the policy in line with the conclusions reached at the outline stage. And in terms of the junctions, there are 3 signalized junctions. So all 3 junctions are signalized in terms of the detailed design. So one will be toucan in terms of the design of it. So whether it will have zebra or zebra with the area for the cycles, that will come forward at the later stage through to 7-8.
Sorry, can I just clarify? On page 24, paragraph 28, it talks about access points, and paragraph 28 says informal pedestrian crossing facilities will serve the eastern access into the development, which is being provided in the form of a left-in, left-out only access. So that access doesn't seem to be signalled. It would be left-in, left-out with an informal pedestrian crossing.
So when you have the crossing across standard way, that will be signalized in terms of at the boundary of the site, then you'll be able to cross without signalized cross.
So the access road, just as you come into the site, will have an informal crossing. So hypothetically, I'm driving down Thanet Way.
You have a signal.
The signals are green. I turn straight in, and there is an informal crossing there with no lights, and someone could be stepping out. And as I turn that corner, I will, because I'm coming down that way, have limited sight of round the corner, because that's just how sight lines work.
Yes, one is signalized, and then the eastern one is at the access point. There are no signals.
Right.
Yes.
So that's an informal crossing, and in my opinion, that seems to be a risk. Yeah, potentially a risk at 8:30 in the morning, 3:30 in the afternoon, etc.
I mean, we're not sure whether we could put another crossing on a corner in the way that you described, but we might be able to have a no access. So, but the point is, we haven't got the detailed layout. Yeah. Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you, Chair. I want to reiterate some of the points that my colleagues have made about speed, because I just think it's like really important. Like, so what we're looking at here at the moment would be a 50-mile-per-hour road where you kind of have to slow down and then turn in. Now, I've not been driving long, but in the time I've been driving, I've been on roads like that where I've had to take a turn on a fast road. It's actually really dangerous. I hate doing it. And like, you got to slow down, and then you get boy racers behind you sometimes who will overtake you, and they may not see what's in front.
Now, what if I was slowing down to turn into that development on the Fenwick Way, and there's someone behind me who's like not a safe or considerate driver? They try to overtake me. They can't see past me. There's a school kid crossing the road. Bam! Like that's sort of like that's a concern I've got about this.
I can see that actually.
I think maybe roundabouts on these junctions would be a better way because it forces people to slow down and consider what's coming from their right, and then they can go in more easily.
It's harder to put a crossing with a roundabout.
Oh yeah, fair enough. Yeah, but like a good for like traffic management though, if it's like something that can be squared, and I do also think like, would it be possible to ask the developer to make a contribution towards a speed camera to kind of enforce the speed along that stretch of road? And the other thing I was going to ask was, like, I know people have brought up the school, and I heard you, Simon. You know, you said we can't possibly promise that it will be a school, but like, can we at least do something? Can we at least put an informative on a condition? Just something to show we've tried.
Yeah, sorry, just on that point, just to be really clear, in terms of the building of a school, that will be a matter for Kent County Council or whichever authority is responsible for education. So they would make the decision when and whether to build a school on that site. But what we'd be doing if we granted permission here is we'd be securing that land so it could happen. And that's the really important aspect, the decision for us here, because we would be granting a permission that would allow that, facilitate that school to happen if the education authority, which might be a unitary authority or whatever exists at that time, if they decide to do it. So it's securing the land, which is a really important part of the process of delivering schools. So yeah, that was the point there. In terms of the other points, just to pick up, I mean, this is an outline application, so layout and design are all reserved matters, so they will have to come in as a separate application in the future. So we do get the opportunity to look at things such as that crossing point on the road, the informal crossing point that Councillor Forrester mentioned. So these will all have to come in as reserved matters applications, so we will get the chance to either agree them or not agree them. So it's within our gift then to control the internal arrangements. And I think in terms of the Muga and the play areas, we can certainly add to that condition to say, look, they should be overlooked and integrated into development, but then you'll get a second opportunity to look at whether they are integrated and overlooked sufficiently when those reserved matters applications come in.
I've got quite a long list of people. I think Councillor Dan Smith now.
Thank you very much, Chair. A couple of things really. Well, firstly, the picture that Councillor Flanagan put up of the railway bridge with the pedestrian access there. Obviously, people coming from the Swalcliffe direction would and children in particular would be using that. It looked particularly dangerous to me, and I don't know if there's anything that could be done about that. I suspect not, but it certainly looked way too dangerous as an access point from that direction. And then I think Councillor Old's point about the green gap. I mean, that is clearly our policy. Point 11.49 in the existing local plan says the City Council has successfully sought to protect the built-up areas in Herne Bay and Whitstable from coalescence through its application of a green gap policy. This approach remains one of the Council's key objectives for both coastal towns. And in terms of tilted balance, I think the pressure that's being put upon the green areas, the green gap, to my mind, increases the balance in favour of keeping the green gap. So it becomes harder and harder to tilt it. And I think that is something that should be weighed against this application, that you once this has gone, that gap has shrunk, and it's shrinking significantly with it. And it's I also think the point Councillor made about the in the provisional local plan for the future, that we have the potential for a school at Greenhill on the Thornwood Road, which is less than a kilometre away. So traffic for schools and things, and two schools in an area, I don't think the modelling for educational purposes has been done on that front either. And then I agree with almost everything everyone said about the highways issues that have cropped up in here. On those issues, to take the whole matter away and defer it and have a close look at the modelling on that, and then come back, may be a better option, so that we get a clearer picture of what the risks and the possibilities are. Because I think there are a significant number of issues that have cropped up from various people, and obviously in amongst that you can perhaps look at the play areas and so on, because I think Naomi and Beth, Councillor Forrester and Councillor Smith also raised those issues, and I think that's again something that should be looked at. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, we haven't used any weight, we haven't put any weight on the new draft local plan, but having, sat through a lot of that discussion, this debate about the two schools and the very, very strong representations we had from people in those areas at that time, which was 5 minutes ago in terms of planning, were that, we desperately needed spaces for schools. So it is difficult because we've had those representations, and those representations were quite strong not that long ago, that so many children were being bused over to Canterbury for secondary education. Wasn't acceptable. And of course, that itself causes an awful lot of transport. So, and I think that, anyway, I'm just sort of saying that there's a balance to be struck on that issue, which is not being heard in the committee, but I'm going to say it because I was part of that debate and dialogue, and that was very strongly made to us at that point when that plan was coming together. So just on that point, sorry?
Yeah, I think the location in the draft local plan for the school in Thornwood Road is probably a better bet, because it doesn't have this access risk off the Thanet Way. There was a lot of consideration given, as you've just said, and it's and I think that was done for a reason. This seems very piecemeal and very last minute, and I think that's something that has led to a lot of these highways issues and problems. So it may be worth taking it into consideration on that basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. We're caught between a rock and a hard place, really. We're in presumption. This is in the merging local plan, so if it's not built this year, it can be built in the next 3 or 5, 6 years. So, and that's been voted forward, and we're in section 19 or whatever. A few things on the actual application. There are traffic, no one's actually mentioned it, actually there's a lot of traffic building up in, I believe, St John's Road. As you're coming onto there, it backs up to almost where the Seaview Caravan Park is. I mean, it goes quite a long way back to there, so it's already building up. When it comes to the bungalows on the circumference of the site, and also the other problem we got is this is an outline application, which I don't like, so I must say that. But when we come to the bungalows, can we insist that the footings are of the depth so they can't build above them, because to compensate for the people that have so it keeps them as bungalows. I think we can, hopefully we can condition that. Someone did mention about the bridge, and I actually disagree. I think that'd be a superb idea. We've got one in Greenhill. It works extremely well. It's extremely safe. There's an opportunity now to actually put one in, because there's a land being developed on the other side where this site is, and there must be some way of compulsory purchasing land on the other side of the Thanet Way, so we can put a bridge in. So I really do think that would be a good idea and a good move forward, and it certainly, if it saves one person's life, it's worth doing. The Thanet Way scenario, it's the speed limit should be 30 all the way down there now, so it's getting ridiculous. I mean, this is just the start of it. It's all it's all going to be built on. You've got it at Whitstable and sea salt has been built on. You've got the new one on the ocean views. I mean, eventually we won't have a green gap. It's eventually going, but if that's our policy, but as I said, this is already in the emerging local plan. So if we do it, refuse it today, if it's refused today, they'll go to appeal and they'll win on appeal. So thank you, Chair.
An argument for making the best conditions possible. Next person on my list is Naomi Smith, Councillor Naomi Smith.
I have got a little bit of water. Actually, on the bungalows, quickly, bungalows are often 2 stories. Yeah, but they call them bungalows in planning, so they're not bungalows, they're 2 stories. Yeah. Yeah, so that's just mine because I've had that locally as a problem. Yeah. Yes. Because they have bedrooms upstairs. Yeah. Yeah. Bus stops are all over 800 metres away from this site. There is talk of giving £500 to the people who live in the estate, but they're not going to walk on a winter's day along the Thanet Way with the rain and the 50-mile-per-hour lorry splashing up beside you. This is a real, these are some real issues. I really think we need to get Kent County Council to change their mind on this, on the speed. I still don't think people will use the bus stops that are too far away, because they won't. They'll buy a car, or they'll already have a car and they'll drive the car, and they'll put more traffic onto all of that area around there. I mean, I got stuck 2 weeks ago between that roundabout and the Greenhill roundabout because the bloody car boot sale started, and it took an hour and a half to get from Sea Salter to Herne Bay. So, and that was on the Thanet Way and not going on the bends. So I do think the bus stops and the bus strategy, I don't feel there's a bus strategy, and I think that needs to be either sorted out or, we need to get something. I mean, I know they say that the applicant's willing to put some money into a bus, but when? None of that, we're supposed to have a bus first strategy, and it's not a bus first strategy. It's the complete opposite of that. And I know that Councillor Prentice will probably come back with much more detail on that one. Oh, the other thing was, picking up Councillor Bothwell's thing about the sewage, Southern Water say that there is a problem, and even though it is going to Chestfield Roundabout, it still says there's a problem. Has that been rectified? Sorry to go on a bit, but that's 3 things, I think. So they say it's a minor problem. What is a minor problem? And does the infrastructure at Chestfield Roundabout able to cope with this new infrastructure that's going in? Because it's not clear. That's not clear.
So, thank you, Chair. So there is going to be a new infrastructure, new pipes to connect to the Chestfield roundabout chamber to dispose of the foul water. Naturally, because of the fact that we're generating new foul water, there is that increased provision and need for disposal. So without that infrastructure, Southern Water is saying that there is insufficient facilities available. There will be provision in terms of the new infrastructure and new pipes to deliver to mitigate the need arising from the development and to dispose of the foul water safely, and not to Maydowns Road, but to the Chestfield roundabout chamber.
It's a sequence of the complaints and then the acceptance as a limitation and then the solution.
So in the report it says, so they have come back and said that they can categorically not have an issue with it. Basically, because in the report, I'm trying to, because they say it says that Southern Water have said there is, yeah, it's sort of minor. It was saying there's a minor issue, and you're now saying that they have found a way of solving that minor issue, or does the minor issue still stand?
Yes, so basically, I think at the time when Southern Water provides us with a response, they identified that there is insufficient capacity within the foul water provision, and there is a requirement for the applicant or the developer to enter into Section 106 agreement with Southern Water to deliver that requirement and the provision in terms of the needed pipes to get rid of the waste.
Yeah, because it's saying it may lead to a minor increase in the risk of impact on the sewer network, and that's that's a big deal because a risk. We shouldn't have a risk to the impact of our sewer network if we're approving a development. I'm sure.
Yeah. So what it is, we actually spoke with Southern Water again today, just to be absolutely clear on
Yeah,
the
I know.
position.
Yeah.
There's an existing pipe that goes down Maydowns Road, and it could take about 50%. There's a capacity for about 50% of this new development. But what Southern Water have said is that they don't want any water going into that pipe. Okay, so it could take 50%, but they don't want any going in there. So what they've said is they want a new pipe going from this development to the Chestfield roundabout, so bypassing Maydowns Road completely. And there'll be a pumping station on the development that would then push that water down to Chestfield roundabout and then out to the Swale Cliff wastewater treatment works.
But what they've said what it says in the report, this minor risk, no longer applies because they've changed that, or is there still a minor risk? This is what I'm not getting to the bottom of.
Well, you've had the same answer twice. I don't.
Is the new pipeline taking away that minor risk?
Or do we need to defer to clarify?
Yeah, because we can't approve something that's going to give us a risk. Sorry.
Yeah, the risk is around using the existing pipe, which they're not going to do. They don't want that to happen. They're going to run a new pipe, which will then mitigate that risk.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on. Councillor Prentice next, please.
Thank you, Chair. And there's a few points I suppose I want to make as resident public transport nerd. Firstly, though, just on footpaths, I mean, I am pleased to see there's the plan for the shared footway on the southern side, because obviously without that, the crossings don't work. I did note on my visit there is an opportunity for upgrading the northern side, which appears to be slipping. And I know that's not part of the application, but it might be something to consider, is that the ground conditions of that area mean you need to sort of to pay particular regard to what materials you use and how you build a footway, because obviously if you're putting something down, you don't want to be rebuilding it in a few years. Obviously, I'm not a geologist, so I'm not an expert on the particular conditions, but it's just something I noted. Just coming on to the point about buses, which has sort of been touched on a bit. There's a few things I picked up in the paper which sort of concern me. Stagecoach obviously is the monopoly provider of bus services in the area, but we seem to be planning future bus provision, if any, on the whims of one provider. It's like outsourcing, I don't know, food policy to Tesco's. Sorry, Tesco's, but I'm just using that as an example. It's a private company headquartered in Germany, owned by a German bank. We can't just be, I don't mean to sound xenophobic when I say that, but we're sort of outsourcing policy to a private company that it just doesn't make sense. The point I'm making really is that we shouldn't be dictating future bus service provision on what one company wants to do. Now, I noticed in the paper, Stagecoach said they had early engagement with the developer, which is what you'd expect, and that's a good thing. But then they didn't bother to respond to the planning application. They didn't submit formally to the planning application. They said it was commercially unviable to run a bus service to that estate. Now, I agree with Councillor Naomi Smith in that, and also, and I'm just going to bring up the exact comments by our own transport officer at Canterbury City Council, who said, I'm trying to find the exact document now. Our own transport officer said that it's more than 1 kilometre from the eastern side of the site, which is more than the 400 metre maximum recommended distance to the nearest bus stops. Now, in the paper that we've got before us, and I'm just finding the exact point, the applicant said they'd be willing to support the provision of a bus stop within the site. I don't see why we can't do that. And I actually find it quite problematic that we can't do that anyway, because we're not relying on one company to provide a bus service, particularly with opportunities such as bus franchising in the future. And I've gone on about this quite a lot before. We have yet to really design a network for our district and East Kent more widely that actually works for people and not just whatever is deemed to be most profitable at any given moment in time. So at the very least, the point I'm making is that we should be providing the infrastructure from the word go so that buses can use the development properly. You can't just put a bus down any old road. You have to design the road properly so that it's not edging past parked cars and so on and so forth. To support that point, in the school site, and I know the school is going to be further down the line, and there is what looks to be a bus parking area within the school site. And on the plan itself, at the very beginning of the paper, it talks about bus provision. So the infrastructure needs to be designed in from the word go, ideally within the site, so that buses can manoeuvre the site, just like any other large vehicle would, refuse vehicles and delivery vehicles and so on and so forth. You have to build in the bus provision specifically and not leave it to the whims of a single company. I mean, ironically, the only other local bus operator actually has its depot just a few hundred yards away on the other side of the railway. So it could quite easily run a service nearby because operationally it's feasible to do so. And that's Regent Coaches. The other point, and I again refer to my declaration of interest at the beginning of the meeting, is that I'm not making a point on behalf of my employer, but I am questioning something around the provision of additional improvements at Chestfield and Swalcliffe Station. Now, Chestfield and Swalcliffe Station, if we were starting from scratch, we would not build a station like that up on an embankment that's inaccessible. There is absolutely no provision for people who are wheelchair users or have push chairs, or anyone, frankly, who has a little bit of difficulty clambering up sets of steps, unless you're sort of fairly mobile. So I suppose I am not connected to any of the comments that were made by Network Rail to the this planning application, but I want to clarify where the proposed funding would go for railway improvements, for station improvements, because it talks that some of the submissions talk about improving Herne Bay Station, which is it's an accessible station now. It's just had 2 new lifts and a footbridge installed, so it's a better station, particularly if you're getting the high speed services to London. Chestfield and Swalcliffe is very problematic, and we wouldn't be building it like the Victorians did. with high on an embankment, up long stairs to get there. A bit like why I'm against this idea of a bridge, a footbridge. You have to build in so much infrastructure simply to get people across the road as well. And you need space for things like ramps. You're not going to put ramps at Chestfield and Swalcliffe. So there's a few question marks there. Yeah, there's other comments I could probably make, but I probably won't because it would probably compromise me slightly. I would like an answer on the bus. I think that bus service point's really important because people aren't going to go to Chestfield Village to get their bus. They're just going to give up. And any money that's put into that from the developer is going to be squandered quite quickly because it will not be a feasible option.
Yes, I'm inclined to agree about the bus provision because I think if we don't have it in, I mean, Simon's talking about an informative. I mean, I think that there's got to be a bus coming into the school. I mean, there has to be. And if bus provision came in at that access and had a way of turning round, it has to be because the school itself will be served by buses.
Yeah, well, the point I'm making, I suppose, is you can't wait for the school to be built to have your bus provision. I mean, you'd have the 2-a-day buses anyway, which is no good for a regular turn up and go service. So you need it from the beginning.
I just meant in the design of this estate, there has to be provision for buses coming in at that. Well, I'm arguing not only for the school, that this is. So I think we should build it in. I mean, how
informative?
Is an informative strong enough?
Well, yeah, because we've got the reserve matters applications coming in later. So if the informative says, we would expect them to include provision for a bus, so then that's an expectation.
So Simon's just going to explain how an informative would work. I think that would be better than me trying to do it.
So the layout would be a reserved matter, so that there'll be a separate application that comes in later on down the line if we grant outline for this today. What we can do is we can add an informative note on the outline planning permission to say that we would expect there to be the layout details and the access details proposed under the reserve matters, that they would have bus accessibility into and out of the site.
Yeah.
Does that work?
I think that's what the gold standard is for bus provision. It would be good to have it on Thanet Away as well, although I think primarily the bus needs to be accessible for people living on the site, because otherwise they're just not going to use it.
I think if the turning is in the site and the bus stop is in the site, it's also safer than on the Thanet Way. Given all the debate we've had about the traffic, I actually think it should be in the site.
I mean, I think it could be both.
Trying here to do a lot of design detail that we can't really do, so I think we should just decide.
Well, Chair, we've already spoken about crossings, and as part of the road design, we need to be considering where bus stops go, because they also slow traffic down, and quite rightly, and bus stops need to be placed close to crossings where people can get on and off buses safely and cross the road safely. So I think that's absolutely crucial that we consider this at this stage, both on the old Thanet Way and within the site. So I just want to see much more work done on that, because I'm disappointed that Stagecoach showed so little interest in it, and we should be relying on them. We should be taking a lead. Yeah, there's a lay-by on the other side which seems to be totally unused. I mean, someone who's more local to the site might tell me that's used a lot, but it could have a bus stop.
We've actually got quite a number of people waiting to speak, but Councillor Jones, if you want to come in on this point.
Just quickly going back. Obviously, we haven't got a bus service down at the golf course site, and when having spoken to Stagecoach regarding that, basically what we need to do is if we're going to have either condition or the Section 106 money to give to the bus company to subsidise them, but it has to be at the get-go. There's no, that it has to be as the first person's putting their key in the door, because if you speak to them like we did, it is a significant cost and they won't run the bus service. But if any money's coming forward from the site, say if it's after 50 houses gone in, it's too late. That's why we haven't got the service on the golf course development, because money would have been given, but everyone's in their cars by the time the bus service money is available. So if there's any money, however it's worked, and have discussions, not just with that one company, with any other company, saying that you could provide a service, here is the money to start it off. Otherwise, there'll never be a service. Obviously, the infrastructure has got to be there, as you pointed out. That's all I would say. Be thinking about making it from the get-go, not after 10, 20, 30, 50 houses. You've lost those people, they're all in their cars. And that's why we haven't got one on the golf course, and we're not going to get one at the moment. So.
Yeah, I think that's outside the scope, because at the moment we have only got, I mean, what we're talking about is trying to future-proof. I think that we could do. I don't think we can, and the bus routes, buses go up and down the Chesterfield Road, and that's where they are at the moment. But we need to have provision within the site to future-proof it. But I think we're trying to design something rather than just say what we think should be designed in. Did you want to comment on?
Thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Old put his finger firmly on the pulse here. We're looking at a development which is in the Green Gap. If we get a school in my lifetime, I will personally eat this agenda. We are not going to get a school. This is a fig leaf. So whatever. And indeed, as Simon Thomas has pointed out, the school would break up part of the development. Well, that's never going to happen. So discount that. We're looking at 300 houses with no school. Whether it's got a bus service, it would be very unusual if it has, because no one else has got a bus service. So at the end of the day, do we want 300 houses in the Green Gap? Forget about the school. It's never going to happen. Well, if it does, I'll be amazed. But in the past, we've spoken to KCC about secondary schools. It's not the cost of the land. The land is relatively insignificant. It's the cost of the school. It costs millions for a secondary school. The cost of the land is largely here or there. That's what KCC told me, and I believe them in that instance. So I applaud the councillors for trying to get into the nitty-gritty, but at the bottom line is we're presented with this as it is laid out here. Do we want it or do we not? Personally, I do not. Thank you.
Councillor Forrester.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, just to echo some of the points Councillor Prentice said, I'm against bridges, footbridges, that is. They're not accessible, and they're particularly unhelpful if you've got if you're in a wheelchair or have a buggy. But my substantive point wants to be about the wastewater, to come back to that, and disposal of foul water. Sorry, let me go back to my correct page, because I was looking at another matter. If you go to page 48 and paragraph 138, you'll see that this talks about the alternative point of connection which is being proposed. And I take this as the Chesterfield roundabout, I understand, from the paragraph. But it says in the final sentence, this would require an application to be made to Southern Water, which has raised no objections to the proposed approach. I'm not clear what that means in terms of what does require an application to Southern Water mean? What's the timescale for that? What's the process for that? What's the certainty that that will happen? And then I went further and I noted the conditions, and there don't seem to be any conditions in the papers we've seen to require that. The current conditions only seem to pertain to surface water drainage. So I'd like the answers to that, and a condition to be placed to ensure that happens. If those answers aren't available, I feel that we may need to defer this until those answers are known, because the disposal of the wastewater is a key issue, not just for this site, but for the whole area. Anyone who saw SOS Whitstable on Saturday will know that. Thank you.
I think Joe's going to pick this one up.
Yes, so this application is a separate process, separate from planning process. That's Section 106 application to Southern Water directly by the developer. They can apply for that once the permission is granted. So once there is outline permission in place, then the developer goes off to do the work, design the network, and get approval from Southern Water to actually carry out those improvements.
So, given what's been said previously about this change in sewage, addressing what was identified as a minor issue and taking the wastewater away from Mayfield, why isn't there a condition requiring that to happen before first spade can go in the ground, etc., etc.? Because at the moment, it looks like you could start building, and build up to whatever the capacity is without having that, or indeed you could keep building and maybe there will be a minor issue.
So the applicant wouldn't be able to carry out with building houses without having a connection. Like, you wouldn't get a building right sign off for a house that doesn't have connection to the foul water. It has to go through the process.
No, I understand that, but so there doesn't seem to be anything set out requiring the connection to be made to Chestfield. We've been told there have been conversations in between this report being published and tonight's meeting where verbal assurances have been given that that will be the case, but I'm not seeing anything that will require that. What's going to ensure this happens before one or all the houses are built?
So that is the proposal on the table. In the drainage strategy sets out what is the proposal that we're approving through planning. And I think there is a condition requiring surface water details. If you feel that is necessary, that condition could refer to the foul water connection as well.
I mean, I don't know what other councillors think, but given the concerns that have been expressed by speakers and the wider concerns in the district about wastewater, it seems a myth not to have a condition here addressing that when we've got a condition about surface water. If I can just add, I don't know if there's something in the Wilden toolbox, as it were, that can address this, but this has come, forward, and I think this is something that we need to address and needs to be seen to address.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I think my advice would be that it's unnecessary because the developer will have to connect to a sewage system, and Southern Water will only allow them to do it if they provide a new pipe. But in the same way that we dealt with this point on the hill, we could add a condition saying that we want to see that happens before any dwelling is occupied. Yeah.
Could we, just because this is a mixed development with other, care home, local sites, school, etc., before any buildings are occupied, utilised?
Yeah.
You say the wording, but you get what I mean.
Councillor Bothwell.
Thank you, Chair. There seem to be a great number of problems, at least 6 or 7 very significant problems with this proposal. There are 1 or 2 meritocratic elements, the eco standards, which has been mentioned, of the houses being all electric, solar PV, etc. That's good. the principal of the school, but people have said they don't believe it's going to happen. It's good also to see that the main hedgerows and lines of trees are being preserved, but I have doubts about whether they will be in practice. It's not mentioned in the construction environment management plan, CEMP, that any protection will be given to existing trees on the site. And I think that's an omission from the conditions, that all the existing trees and hedgerows, etc., should be protected with fencing so that they don't get demolished during the construction works. I mean, as happened at Saxon Fields, there's a large housing development at Saxon Fields. The hedgerow, there was a hedgerow on the southern boundary adjoining a footpath, and it was completely grubbed out for no good reason, because there's no development on that particular line. There's a footpath along that line, so why was that grubbed out at Saxon Fields? Particularly concerning is the dangerous access for school children and other people, pedestrians going to the site under that railway bridge. I can't see how that can be overcome except by tunnelling under the embankment or something to provide a decent size footpath connecting Swellcliffe with the area to the south, or a bridge which perhaps links in with the railway station as well as Thanet Way, as well as the development, perhaps, but bridges are not ideal, I know. The traffic modelling sounds very suspicious. I'm very surprised that KCC say that there'll be no significant impact on traffic at St John's Herne Bay roundabout. I just can't understand how that would be possible with the development of this site. So I think we should go back to KCC and ask them to produce a thorough traffic modelling of the development on all the road junctions surrounding the particular site. The sewage issue, the connection to the Chestfield roundabout sump is just one issue. That's a kind of minor issue. The next stage is it goes to Swellcliffe treatment works, which is already pumping sewage into the sea on a regular basis, which is currently still completely inadequate at dealing with the current levels of sewage. So this will just add to that problem. And finally, the loss of the green gap. As others have said, it's in the new local plan, the draft local plan. So once it's in there, it's almost a fait accompli. But it's a loss to what we had before in terms of strategy for keeping towns separate. I think we should go back to the applicant and defer this application today and ask them to come up with reasoned arguments to address all these particular issues. So I would argue for a deferment. Thank you.
I would be happy to second that.
Just a moment. Before we go into another proposal, we do have one on the table because I did propose grant. I'm being advised that we could put, enough conditions in for all these points people have made, but it is quite a bit now. So, Simon, do you want
me to say what the conditions?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, first of all, I mean, I totally appreciate the point you're making about the general big picture on sewage and so on, but there is a connection proposed which is and would be and will be eventually acceptable, but we can condition it that it does happen the way that we have answered to Beth. But I think on many of the other things we have got quite a few either informatives or conditions. Let's just, first of all, we've got to deal with this proposal that's on the table anyway, before we have any other proposals, if we do get there. which is a proposal to grant. So just let me ask Simon to run through the notes he's made about those changes and informatives. Oh, sorry.
Can we just please confirm that if we vote against this, then we will get another chance to vote to defer it, please?
Because deferring it and getting the additional information that Councillor Bothwell set out might address some or all of the concerns that have been expressed, and therefore some or all of the additional conditions I think you're about to read out might not be necessary. So I understand what you're saying, Chair, but it feels like the committee is being bounced into position to refuse when actually what we want to do is defer and get more information and then perhaps approve.
If I may, Chair, I understand you could possibly withdraw your original proposal if your seconder agrees, and then we could go straight to defer.
I have to confess it's a bit less clear at this side of the table what additional information we're going to get with an outline application. So perhaps if it was clear, if you don't mind, Councillor Bothwell, could you just repeat what additional information we would be deferring for? If you just clarify that, and we can see whether the various conditions and additions that Simon has noted would or would not meet them. Let's just have that rain check before we move further. Thank you, if you wouldn't mind.
Well, I think other councillors may be able to add to these, but one of them is the traffic modelling. I don't believe that a sort of sounds like an informal response from KCC on the traffic is sufficient. I think we need to have a thorough and proper traffic modelling of all the junctions surrounding the site. I think we need to look at not only traffic, but also pedestrian movements. The application doesn't have very much detail at all about footpaths and pedestrian movements and how these fit in with the local footpath network connecting beyond the site, under the railway and further afield towards Chesterfield and in other directions, so that we have a complete picture of how people, especially school children, will get to the site and other people will access the site on foot or on cycle. A realistic assessment of what the impact of the additional sewage will have on Swellcliffe treatment works. Okay, they can connect to the sewer by pumping it, but what will the impact be on Swellcliffe treatment works? It's already fighting to try and deal with the existing sewage, and it's not coping. So this is just going to make it worse. So those are some of the issues.
Yeah, as I say, it's we need to go back over some of the things that have been said because some of those things have already been answered. So I'll ask Simon to do that now.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, in terms of traffic modelling and pedestrian movements, I mean, these have been extensively considered by Kent County Council, which is the local highway authority. They have responsibility for assessing these matters and advising, because at the end of the day, any alterations would be within the public highway, which is their responsibility. So our role in this is alongside them, but they take ultimately responsibility in terms of accepting highway safety information about highway safety as a result of a planning application. So there's no more information that we could ask for that KCC hasn't already seen. From what I can gather, the applicant had extensive pre-application discussions with KCC as well. So they're not.
Society's questions were answered.
Yeah, and they answered the Whitstable Society questions that were raised. So there's been a lot of toing and froing and a lot of thorough consideration by KCC before the application came in. and afterwards, there's nothing else that we could reasonably ask for at all. I mean, it really has been thoroughly looked at, and ultimately the Highways Authority is satisfied, and of course pedestrian movements as well.
That's welcome.
Yeah, and in terms of the impact on the pedestrian movements, we've shown you plans, and anyone who's been to the site will know where obviously the train station is and where the various bus stops are, and the way the buses go, Chestfield Road, the triangle, etc. So you know where those buses are. We've got that information, so there's nothing else that I could ask for. In terms of the impact, the wastewater treatment works capacity, you know, we had a training session or briefing session a couple of weeks ago where we talked about, you know, investment that Southern Water is making, has been agreed by Ofwat, but it's not a planning matter. We don't control the wastewater treatment works. We can't. It's not our business. It's the Environment Agency. It's the regulatory authority, and we know that greater investment is going into Swale Cliff, but we don't have any control over how that investment is spent. So there's nothing else that we could ask for that would help you make a planning decision
That we don't know already.
that we don't know already. So what I was, you know, through the debate, I've made some notes, and if we were to grant permission, then one of the conditions that we do want, which does touch on the point about the wastewater treatment works, is a condition that says no occupation happens before the connection to the wastewater treatment works has been made, and that was Councillor Forrester's concern. So we can add that, which is exactly the same approach we took to the hill, and the inspector agreed that condition was reasonable. So we'd be replicating the approach we took with the hill. In terms of the play areas, then there was a concern that they should be overlooked and integrated in the development. We can add that requirement to the condition. And we can also, just picking up on your point about protected trees, we can add a condition that says there should be protective fences around the trees on site to protect them during the course of development. That's absolutely fine for us to do, and we can certainly add that. And then in terms of the bus route, we talked about an informative, which again we could informative note we could put on the decision notice, which says that we would expect the reserved matters to include bus accessibility in and out of the site. So I think those have covered the main points that I've picked up during the course of the meeting, but I don't see that there's any other information that we can have that would help you to make a decision.
I have, sorry. Can I come back on that?
Yes, please do.
Well, with regard to the traffic modelling, we've heard from two public speakers that the traffic modelling does not accurately model the surrounding junctions and roundabouts. So I failed to understand.
Apologies, Councillor Bothwell, but when the officer, Joe, covered all the points that were made by the speakers, she did say that we had information on each of those roundabouts, all those additional roads, and that all those questions that Whitstable Society in particular had raised had gone to KCC and had been replied. I read an extensive paper, which I can't pretend to understand every technical detail, all on the portal with very extensive traffic modelling figures in. As I say, I wouldn't try and summarise it, which is why I definitely asked Jo to do that. But she, you know, the officer really did clearly say that those points that the speakers had raised, which are perfectly reasonable, you know, had been looked at, and we have replies. I mean, I'm not trying, you know, to pull any, you know, I'm not trying to make it difficult. I'm just saying I don't think that at the moment there's anything there that would, as Simon put it, help us in any way, because there's not additional information that we can have that is relevant to the actual material of the application, remembering it is an outline application. That was my difficulty in the first place about saying that from this side of the table it didn't look or feel, sorry, I couldn't hear anything that I could see that we could usefully get out of a deferment. I'm not saying we shouldn't, but we have got to give Simon and Joe something, comprehensive, probably, substantive. Otherwise, we're not going to be any better off with a deferment. We simply put off the decision.
The applicant does have the right of appeal.
I still have Councillor Thomas, who hasn't had a chance to come back in, had his hand up absolutely ages ago. I think before we do anything else, Councillor Thomas, would you like to come in? Because you may be making additional points we haven't heard yet.
Well, probably not, Chair. I'm coming back to the bus first policy that this council is trying to achieve, and I've said it on the local plan and the emerging local plan. It doesn't really work. I mean, for instance, Whitstable train station has only got disability access on one side. You go to the seafront side, there's no disability access. You've got to go round. There is a long route round. So you're in the same scenario there. Admittedly, there's not big steps and stuff. This is what I keep coming back to. It keep coming out. We want buses. When it comes to the school children and the buses for the school, Haynes buses run some of those coaches. Regent coaches run some of those coaches, but these are coach companies. They're not bus companies. I mean, Paul Regent's only got probably 20 coaches. I'm not sure they're disabled accessible. So they're not all disabled accessible. I know Paul quite well. So it's to try and get another bus company, and I just don't think, I can't see how it's going to work. It's just a comment really. So we're kind of stuck really, and this is the whole point. We're working on a policy, the bus first policy, but we don't control the buses, and I keep saying this.
Yes, we have a policy that is in a plan that goes to 2043 now. Now, wait a minute, which order are we in? I think Naomi Smith and then Councillor Prentice. Thank you.
Okay, it's coming back to Councillor Bothwell's, thing about deferring. I think all of this committee believe that the speed limit is too high. And I would like to defer just on.
I said there was another point at the beginning.
So it's the speed limit in particular of 50. I can't vote for this scheme with a 50-mile speed limit on the Thanet Way with pedestrian access along the side where it's just. I would like Kent County Council to look again at that speed limit. And that's why I would want to defer.
Councillor Prentice, please.
Thank you. It was surprisingly on the bus first policy. If we're not putting in the infrastructure that allows buses to thrive, regardless of which company provides the services, we haven't got a hope of enabling modal shift, which is the policy wonk term for getting people out of their cars onto buses, onto sustainable modes of transport. If we can't get it right on a development of 300 homes, what's the point? We don't have control of bus policy. I understand that, but I think we all need to understand that where we do have control is creating the infrastructure on our developments that enable buses to do what buses do best, which is serve communities. If we don't get it right at the start, then we've created a problem for ourselves in the future. So the point I'm making is around connectivity, and I support all the other points people have made.
I did know, and I did write down 30, not 50, but when we came to it, we'd forgotten about that informative. That was the first one we discussed. It definitely has to be in there.
It has to be in there, yeah.
It does.
point of order, Chair. Do you have to apply for an extension, time-wise?
It's not the case because I thought I did last time and we went over 10 o'clock and I was reliably informed I don't. Is that correct?
Sorry, Chair, it's 4 hours after the start of the meeting.
Yes, I was exactly with you because I was there when we started at 6 o'clock with sandwiches. We had the sandwiches out there. We brought them in here and started at 6 o'clock.
We used to have such a big agenda. We used to start at 6.
We did.
And finish it
and I'm
11.
completely with you. And last time we got to 10 o'clock, I said, I have to stop everybody now. And then I was told, no, I don't. Anyway, so we can go on till 11. I hope we won't. But hang on, we just need to assess where we are. Just give me a minute. I think we need to take this vote. And I hope you've understood about the debate about deferment and that is clear that I personally... Oh, sorry, Councillor Stockley, did you want to...
Sorry, Chair, just to be clear, the informatives that we've been talking about, how much weight will they carry? You know, because a lot of people here are going to think that these informatives are going to change bus access, speeds, sewage. But to be honest, these are suggestions, not much more. So, you know, I think it's important that people are aware of how much weight informatives actually hold. Thank you.
We need to have this debate so that everybody can hear, sorry, because there'll be people tuning in. So we need to use the mics and take one person at a time. Who would like to come in? Councillor Forrester.
I agree with Councillor Stockley's point that I'm really concerned about informatives, given the weight of concern that's been expressed across the committee, and that informative conditions don't provide sufficient weight to reflect the concerns. And I note what the officers have said, but perhaps the applicant, having heard some of the concerns, it may be worth deferring, trying to get more information, clarifying points, and the position may change, having seen and heard the concerns of the committee. So I note what the Chair and the officers said, but I think it's worth it rather to try and clarify the points rather than having informative conditions that don't have weight.
Chair. Chair, can I withdraw the seconding so that we can move forward with this?
I'm going to go and find.
Okay. We can withdraw the proposal, but we need to be really clear what, if we're going to propose a deferment, what exactly we're doing it for and what you think we're going to get back. So absolute clarity about what the officers are supposed to be trying to achieve. So who is going to propose and who is going to ask?
I think...
Sorry, I need to finish what I'm saying. So I need a proposal with clarity about what we are wanting and expecting officers to come back with, because otherwise, obviously, we'll be in the same position when this comes back, and none of us want to do that, do we? So we want to be somewhere different. So I invite you to propose. Thank you.
Do you want to go again, Councillor Bothwell? And I'm happy to second the same proposal.
I propose that we defer this. We refer back to the developer to ask for answers to all the questions that have been raised this evening.
Sorry, Councillor, which particular questions haven't been answered?
By the developer.
I'm happy to second Councillor Bothwell's proposal and the questions that he's listed twice already this evening for those to go back for clarification.
I think we have to be absolutely clear what we're not going to get is more information on highways, which has already been gone over, and all that information is there. Pedestrian movements are already clearly in the paperwork. And Simon covered the Swellcliffe point as well. You were starting to propose some new questions that were not the three that Councillor Bothwell suggested. Because honestly, there is no point in us putting this back for questions that we will not get any more clarity on. It isn't there.
I understand your view, Chair. I think, and I'm asking the lead advisor, is it not within the committee's ability to take a different view to the Chair and ask a question, albeit I note the Chair's view and the view of the officers, it seems, is at one, that we won't get a different answer. That doesn't prevent us asking a question, does it?
Thank you, Chair. Well, you can certainly ask for a deferment, but in doing so, you need to ensure that the matters that you're asking the deferment for are not already in the paperwork or are matters that can actually be obtained. Now, you've heard from Simon that the KCC matters, there's nothing more that can be obtained there. You've heard, his explanation about what can and what can't be obtained. If we were to defer for matters that are already in the public domain, then it would be pointless because we'd have nothing, the officers will have nothing to come back with. So if you are deferring, we need to have things that, we don't already have, the committee doesn't already have in front of them.
Mr. Stockley.
Thank you, Chair. Just a thought, and I know that Simon's going to say that it's unlikely, but I was wondering that a large lump of this development is predicated on the fact that we're getting land that may or may not be used for a school. I think everybody wants a school. We all know the value of that. But has anyone actually asked KCC whether they intend of building a school in the near future? Because we're looking at, is it a 10-year hold on this land or a 20-year hold? 20. Okay, so a lot can change in 20 years. But as I understand it, KCC are unlikely to come up with the money. Well, KCC are going to be gone. So, I think it's fair to assume that this school it's very unlikely in strategic terms that it'll ever be built. So if we wanted to defer on the grounds that we are not convinced that KCC actually want this school, have they reported? Have we heard from them?
I think I've already mentioned this, but I'll go over it again. So just to clarify my earlier position, it wasn't my view out of sort of blue sky. My view was that the officers have given us the information about what things they can go back and find out more about or not, and I was supporting that. On the schools, actually, I think you'll probably remember most of this because you were on the same group, but when we were deliberating the new local plan, we started out with the requirement for 2 schools on the coast. This is on the basis that the projection of the number of houses in the local plan, this is to 2043, remember everybody. We're not talking right now or yesterday. So KCC project their numbers on birth rates that they can see now. So they've got the birth rates coming through and the secondary schools are obviously projected on that. during the process of that plan and discussion, they reduced this to one school. And then they recalculated it again. And by the time we came out with the product, this is the first time, and the second time actually, they decided, no, we needed to make provision for two, because it still could be very likely. And we've actually probably we're back to the number of houses that we were, well, not quite the number, but we're pretty near the number of houses that we were in the first place. And it is predicted on house numbers, birth rates, and calculations. We don't do those, KCC do those. And that debate actually happened. So at the moment, we've only got one. I mean, there is another site, as we know. It is not yet anywhere near coming to us, but it's there in that plan. But that's the background to it. So I don't think we're going to get a different answer. You know, of course, lots of things might fall around. I mean, what's happened in Wincheap, as Councillor Buckman said, is that the numbers, the houses have been filled, but the numbers of children haven't materialised. Well, of course that can happen. So, of course, there's always the case that things change. But, you know, that is the calculation that this is based on. It's not something that we, you know, it's not that these developers have decided on that. It's something that comes out of the local plan. Councillor Naomi Smith.
Okay, with reasons to defer, part one, sorry, is the speed limit. I think we need to get assurance that we need to go back to Kent County Council on this to get the speed limit looked at again. They might say no, and if they do say no, we can keep saying, well, we can't see how this development can go forward with a 50-mile speed limit. So that's part of our problem. And then the other thing was the stuff that Councillor Prentice said about the buses, that we need the buses need to be in at the beginning of the scheme. I mean, it needs to be, you know, I know it's an outline planning application, but if you don't include buses in the outline planning application, like as many people have said, you'll never get buses. So those are the two reasons I would want us to defer.
Simon will comment.
Thank you. I can't even remember what you just said now.
I can.
Sorry. Buses and speed limit.
The two informatives.
What we've suggested is an informative which basically sets an expectation that the reserve matters will include bus access. We could put a condition on, if you prefer, but it's the same effect. That what we're saying is when the reserve matters applications come in, we're expecting bus access to be provided, because that's the point, loud and clear from the planning committee. I don't need to go away and do anything else on that. It's loud and clear. So we can do that, and we're recommending an informative because that's more appropriate. If you're happy with that. And then the speed limit, we can't control it. We are not the Highways Authority. What we could do is because the applicant has to negotiate with Kent County Council, it's called the Section 278 agreement under the Highways Act for all these road improvements. We could put in our 106 agreement, our planning agreement, a requirement that the developer uses reasonable endeavours to agree with Kent County Council a further reduction in speed limit to either 40 or 30 miles per hour. Now, it doesn't guarantee it because KCC has to make that decision.
Didn't the applicant actually apply for it being less?
Exactly.
And KCC overruled them? Yes. And that's a real, I mean, this is a problem. I mean, KCC are wrong and are fundamentally wrong on this, you know, and we need to tell KCC that they're fundamentally wrong.
We do, but we can't refuse this application on that basis.
But we can't build this up, we can't let this application go ahead on that basis because it's dangerous.
So what we can do is we can include within the Section 106 agreement a requirement that the developer makes reasonable endeavours, or even best endeavours, to be honest with you, agree with Kent County Council that the speed limit is reduced to either 30 or 40. And that's the best we can do. I mean, it's not.
The problem with that is that it's not good enough, and it should be good enough, surely. I mean, I really.
Well, I suppose it's just the reality, isn't it? That we
I
can
understand the reality, but
so much.
There's no point in me being here because, you know, I'm being asked to. You know, so
the suggestion would be that we put the informative about the bus link, the bus access through,
yes,
and that we include within the Section 106 agreement, we say to the developer, so committee will resolve to grant, subject to these informatives, the conditions that we've talked about, plus a Section 106 agreement that includes a clause that requires the developer to use their best endeavours to secure a reduction in speed limit to 30 or 40. That is the best we can do.
Writing to because we think the writing.
And we can write to the KCC. So we can do our bit. So we can ask the developer to do it through the 106 agreement. And then we do it as well.
there's no guarantee like we had at Ben Acre, and we wanted it reduced. Oh.
Councillor Dan Smith.
Since we seem to be getting nowhere, perhaps we should put it to the vote if I propose that we refuse this one on the grounds of OS 6 and OS 7.
OS 6 and OS 7
Of the draft of the local plan, which is the open spaces, the green gap, essentially.
I think that where we've got advice now, would be better to move to the deferment on the 3 reasons. So we've got work on the 2 informatives because we're not completely happy that they will be sufficient. We can.
Yep.
So yeah. Yep. So we can look at the.
So there's the pipe condition.
No, I don't think I don't. Oh well, we
Clay
can check
area.
all that.
So I can.
We can check on those conditions and those informatives and see whether we can make progress on them. I think that would be a more practical, and I'm advised more concrete.
And the OS policies. Yeah.
And the OS policies, Dan, as well.
Yeah.
So I think that let's do it on those bases, and there is something that the officers could go away and progress.
Chair,
Do I have a proposal?
officers have access to 3 hours of debate, most of which was members giving reservations about this application. Why can't the officers listen to the recording of this debate and pick up all the things which we've been expressing serious reservations about? That's just common sense. Please, let's have some common sense.
Okay, do you want to make that proposal? Please.
Can I propose that officers listen to the debate of this meeting, identify all the issues which members are unhappy about, and come back to the planning committee with answers to those where they can?
Is there a seconder? Councillor Mackenzie seconding. So I'm being advised, and this is what I said a minute ago, when we put together the advice from Kath as well as the advice from Simon, that we can defer for the 2 main issues for the informatives, and the last point on the open space policy, the weight of that and the balance, as we heard at the beginning from Joe. Those are concrete enough. They are, they're points that officers can go away and do a bit of work on and come back. Some of the other points we need to be clear or not, and legally we have to give officers a clarity about what it is we're actually thinking they will come back with, otherwise it's too vague. So we can do that, and if you're happy with that, we can go ahead. You happy with that? Councillor Dixie, are you happy with that? Well, I can, I'm trying to be as clear as I can about the advice that I'm getting. And I do think, we do need to be absolutely clear that we are following procedures and giving people jobs to do that they can actually do. So it's open space, speed limit. The wastewater pipe, we can ask for further clarification, although from this side of the table that did seem clear. And the bus through the site. Okay, so we can take that proposal. Councillor Dixie's proposed. Councillor Mackenzie has seconded. Councillor Bothwell, did you want to come back in?
It's not just the wastewater pipe, it's the adequacy of the treatment works to deal with the sewage.
Yes, okay. So reluctantly, you said you would go ahead with that. Councillor Mackenzie's seconding. John, let's run the vote. A vote for is a vote to defer for those pieces of information to be brought back to us with much more detail, or possibly agreements with the developer or KCC on how we take those forwards, which we would hope we would get some progress with. Thank you.
That's carried. 9 votes in favour, 2 against and 1 abstained.
Excuse me, I want to suggest a short closed meeting. If you could cope with that, everybody. Please. Sorry? Short. So first of all, can we just take the last couple of matters? All right. We haven't got any planning appeal decisions, so there's nothing to report there. There's no urgent business to be dealt with in public, and any other business which falls under exempt provisions none advised. But I want to just have 5 minutes with the committee, and the date of the next meeting is the 26th of May. We close the meeting now.